Simon, who now leads the Alba Party and spoke to us from Aberdeen. Alexander, what's your reaction to Nicola Sturgeon's proposals?
Well, like most people in the Yes movement, I welcome the fact that the starting gun has finally been fired and we can get on with creating the grassroots movement that will be required to win any votes on independence. So I'm glad that the race has finally started.
And how does it compare to the gold standard referendum that you negotiated in 2014?
Well, I've never used the phrase gold standard, but in the Section 30 agreement with David Cameron was a compromise. It was to get Westminster's agreement to acknowledge Scotland's democratic rights. Then I wouldn't give up on the Section 30 enforcing Boris Johnson down that road. I mean, this is an extremely weak UK Prime Minister. I think a puff of wind would blow over Boris Johnson. But you can only do that if you mobilise the people of Scotland with a grassroots campaign. You have parliamentary interventions at Westminster. And you have a diplomatic pressure mounted on the Westminster government. But all these things should be in play now, that the starting gun to that process has been fired today.
Will it satisfy those who of the independence movement who perhaps believe that Nicola Sturgeon has been moving too slowly until now?
Well, obviously, the movement has been glacial, not just slow up until now. But, today is a day to welcome the fact that we're now into that process. But what we need in any of these things, whether it be a Section 30 order, relying on the UK Supreme Court, which I don't regard as the most optimistic scenario, or using the next general election as a plebiscite on independence, any of these things for success depends on having the grassroots pressure and the grassroots movement for independence. And that's what's going to bend Westminster to Scotland's will. I mean, for example, if Westminster won't recognise the results of successive Scottish elections for an independence referendum, then why would they recognise the result of a general election for independence?
If it does go to a general election, will Alba be standing candidates against the SNP, or would you stand back and order the SNP a free ride?
Well, of course, the Alba has two sitting MPs at the present moment, so that would be an agreement of the wider Yes campaign. That's exactly a question which shows why unity is required. Well, you need that united grassroots campaign. Now, we're willing to extend a hand of friendship to make our contribution to that.
Would that mean that Alba would potentially stand candidates in any such a general election?
Well, it means that we've got two sitting MPs at the present moment, but we're open to negotiation if it comes to that. But long before we get to general election, we're still taking the government at its word that October the 19th next year has been penciled in as the date for an independence referendum. We're looking forward to the campaign to bend Boris Johnson to concede a Section 30 to Scotland, and we're looking forward to having Scotland's case argued in the Supreme Court. Because the essential requirement of winning anything is not what parliamentary or political manoeuvre or legal manoeuvre you take. It's whether the willpower is there in Scotland to demand Scotland's rights as a nation. Now that is something that has to be brought into place if we're going to win this struggle.
Alexander, thank you.